Hello and welcome to the No Easy Way Out podcast. My name is Tony Nash and we are coming to you, as always, from the Armory in beautiful downtown Owasso, Michigan. And the Armory is actually going to be the center of our discussion today. The Armory is where my company is located, AZ Business Solutions. And if you've ever seen the outside of the building, it really looks like a fortress. My middle daughter, who really lives in fairy tale land, always tells everybody that my daddy works in a castle. And so it really kind of looks like that on the outside. The building was built over 100 years ago in 1915. The Armory has seen thousands of National Guard soldiers on their way to and from service to our country. It's been the site of hundreds of concerts, dances, and community events. It's been host to debates, lectures, prize fights, sporting events, and weddings. Some familiar artists like the Grand Funk Railroad, Alice Cooper, Jerry Lee Lewis, Sam the Sham, the Pharaohs, and the Kingsmen have all performed here, actually on this very stage that we're coming to you from today. In 2007, the National Guard actually moved to a more modern facility, and the building then sat vacant for almost 10 years until our guest today, Chamber of Commerce President Jeff Deason, had a vision for something that this building could become. It kind of had become a forgotten building in our area. At that time, it was actually sitting behind the existing Chamber of Commerce building that was built, I believe, in the 70s. And Jeff had the opportunity to see it, and he didn't see what it was at the time, but in his mind, he saw what it could be. So fast forward to today, the Armory is home to 20-plus businesses, some startups, some long-standing existing businesses, and is growing. It's really considered the most coveted, some of the most coveted office space in our area. It's been nominated for several awards in the state of Michigan for innovation and creativity. So really just by about every measure that you could think of, the Armory has been a big success. And today, as I mentioned, it's the home to my company, AZ Business Solutions. And the growth that my company has experienced since we moved in here just about a year ago has been exponential. It's given us a lot of street cred, I would say. And so we love being here. The energy in this building, the vibe of this building is awesome. And none of it really would be possible if it weren't for the vision of today's guest. Let's welcome to the show, Jeff Deason. Jeff, welcome to our show today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you. Jeff and I actually met, probably right around 2012, 2013. I was the general manager at the local hotel, and I had went to a convention and visitors bureau board meeting, and Jeff was the president at that time, and that's kind of how we met. And it just happened to be that during that time, Jeff was considering making a move from his current job, which I believe was at Indian Trails, to becoming the president here at the Chamber of Commerce. And so our first really in-depth conversation is when you approached me about maybe taking over the board chair for the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And so I did that, and Jeff and I have had a lot of interaction over the years. When I thought about starting my company, Jeff was one of the first people I went and talked to. We sat down at a local restaurant, and he gave me some tips. He had told me about some other people that have tried it and encouraged me of some things to try and some things to avoid, and gave me some really great advice. And as we've needed space, and as we've needed help promoting our stuff, Jeff's and the Chamber have always been instrumental in helping us. And so we've had just a great relationship, and I really like Jeff. I appreciate his vision, and we're going to talk today all about how this building that we're sitting in today got to where it is. But why don't we start today by you telling our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do for the Chamber?
Sure. Well, again, as Tony mentioned, I'm the president and CEO of the Shiawassee Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're roughly 600 members or so, considered a mid-sized chamber in the state of Michigan, but really for our area, which is primarily agricultural based, we're actually a sizable chamber.
Yeah.
So my experience in the chamber world started, I worked for the chamber back in the mid-2000s, and then I took another position and worked outside of the chamber world for 5 years or so.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then I came back, and I came back as the president and CEO at that point. When I did come back to the chamber as the CEO, one of the the biggest conversations that they were having as a group is, what could we do as a chamber to make a difference in the community, and how could we build something that would be lasting, that we would have our mark on, other than just community events and membership.
Yeah.
So we were looking for kind of a third leg in the stool, and our offices sat right in front of the current where the armory is now.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the office kind of looked like a trailer.
It was small,
in front.
tiny little building right in
Yeah.
front of this big, beautiful building.
Right, and it like took up this line of sight. You couldn't really see this building
Couldn't
behind
appreciate
it.
the architecture.
Not at all. And from the moment that building was built in front of this building, it was hated all over town.
Yeah.
And
A little bit of
so
an eyesore.
for 40 years, people have hated this building. And when I came in, one of the things that the board of directors wanted to do was to figure out how to make this something happen here.
Yeah.
Because there had been, 3 or 4 different plans for this facility over the years,
Yeah.
but nothing had been able to get traction and get moving forward.
Okay. So we're going to talk a lot more about the process of when the first moment you saw the building and thought about this and to the moment that you moved in. But first of all, I want to give our audience a little bit of a chance to get to know you on a more personal level.
Okay.
So these are some really hard-hitting questions here.
All right,
And
all right.
so first thing I would ask, though, is what do you want people to think of when they say the name Jeff Deason?
I think, if I could be remembered as somebody who you'd want on your team,
Oh.
that would be really important to me.
Yeah.
I'm a musician. I appreciate playing my part in a group
Mhm.
and being part of something bigger. And I would really like to be known as a good teammate.
Okay. Now I want to talk about this process. To our audience listening, to me, this whole process was inspiring to me. I remember the first time I heard you talk about it, and I kind of thought, I don't know about that. That seems pretty lofty for Owasso, and you seemed convinced, but I appreciated that. But then to see it actually take shape and move into, it was very inspiring to me. And so that's kind of what I want to talk to our audience about today. If there's somebody out there listening that maybe has an idea or has a vision for something they'd like to do, or a project, or maybe a renovation or something like that, kind of give them an idea of what the process was like. And so tell our audience really about the first time that you walked inside this building and kind of the condition it was in and what it was like.
Well, as a group, our board decided that we wanted to look into this project a little bit further, which meant bringing in some architectural assistance and getting some vision from some folks who had done projects like this before. And we were able to secure the keys to the place from the Michigan Office of Military and Veterans Affairs. So we had the keys to the building, and we just came over here and just, spent a lot of time in just being in here.
What did the building look like at that time?
It was much different than it is now. There was a drop ceiling that was just below. There's some really large girders in the building, steel girders, and right below all that was a drop ceiling.
Oh.
And when we first removed the panel and saw that there were these, super high, beautiful ceilings in this place, we knew right then that we had to get that back somehow.
Yeah.
And so a lot of stuff was just kind of covered over, so we didn't really know what we had. And then in the main conference room where we're sitting today, there were no windows along the back of the building.
Yeah.
And we knew that we wanted to get light in the building, so we needed to put some windows in here. So that was part of the vision. And then in the very front of the building, there's a large circular round window that was bricked over. So we knew the whole idea was to let as much light into the space as possible, and make it feel like you're not, sitting in a dark room all the time.
Yeah. So, it was in rough shape. It had been sitting for a while. I heard stories of the floor, it was a gym floor, really being in rough shape. And so seeing something like that, you obviously there was something that drew you to it, something that made you think, all right, this has tremendous potential. So what was it that drew you to the building and made you really see what it could be?
I guess for me, I saw it as a potential community asset, that was being underutilized, and this beautiful building that was just sitting empty, kind of rotting from the inside out. And, it sits right on the Shiawassee River. It sits on the CIS bike trail and the river trail.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a gateway into the downtown that you have the arts area on the other side of the river in Kerwood Castle, and then you have the downtown, but this is kind of a waypoint in between.
Yeah.
And it also gives us public restrooms in the downtown, which we've never had
Never
before.
yeah.
So it was more along the lines of what it could be, and how we could take this thing and turn it back into something that the whole community could be proud of and use.
Right. Okay. So once you kind of started thinking about this, I'm sure there was a thought process that was involved. Do you remember who the first person you told your idea to, and tell us what their reaction was like?
Well, I mean, I can't claim having the first idea to do this. There was probably 4 or 5 different plans
Sure.
before I ever started. But this particular vision and this particular
Right.
action, I would say Carrie Rathbun Hawks was probably the first person I talked to. She was instrumental in hiring me in. And, we had long conversations. She was my board chair at that time. And so we had a lot of conversation about it. And then I think the next one would probably be Jay Slingerland,
Okay.
who was also part of the board at that time. He was very instrumental in moving this forward.
And so I know a lot of people had talked about doing different things with the building, and had even talked about utilizing in some capacity what it is today. But really getting it to this point, you were kind of the first person to really start pushing things forward. So when you told them, and like I said, I know the idea itself wasn't brand new, but how did they react to that? Did they think your idea was going to work, or was it going to just be like one of the other many ideas that have been presented and kind of fell by the wayside?
Well, I kind of approached this one a little bit different than maybe I would other projects, in that I just wanted to take little chunks at a time, and hey, let's do the feasibility study and see where we're at. We don't have to make any decisions now.
Right.
Okay, then when we got that back, it was okay, well, let's cost it out. Let's see where we're at. Let's see what a contractor can do for us.
Right.
And just take it step
by
at a
step.
time. And the whole idea was not necessarily people saying yes to it, but not saying no.
Yeah.
And just keeping the conversation going over time.
Right. So from the first time, like I said, from the first time you really kind of saw what you described in your mind, you saw kind of what it could be. From that first moment you had that thought to opening day, when you guys started moving the chamber in, and you were open, we were open for business. We moved in on that day too. How long was that process from that first initial thought to the day it was open?
It was like 5.5 years.
5.5 years.
5.5 years. And I never, when I started out trying to do this, I would have never believed it would take so long.
Yeah, and so if you had known it was going to take 5.5 years, do you think you still would have been as ambitious to pursue it?
Maybe, I think there's I had a certain naivete, on what it actually took to make something like this happen.
Sure.
If I was to do another project similar to this, I don't think that I would be as emotionally attached as I was to this.
Sure.
And where you're waiting on every single thing, and you're either
Losing sleep
crushed
over
or you're excited, and it was just there was so much emotional attachment to this that I would have never anticipated going in.
Yeah, and what's neat about that to me is we live in such an instant gratification society. I mean, there are so many things that we can just have at our fingertips, and even sometimes you can start a business in a day. Now, it doesn't mean you can be successful necessarily, but you can start things. And things that used to take days and weeks and months, sometimes you can do now much quicker. And so people have gotten used to having things now. And so I think sometimes people look at something they want to do, and if it's not happening right away, they kind of get discouraged. And so I really kind of want to ask you about maybe some of the setbacks along the way that you had that you kind of had to overcome, things that happened that made you just kind of feel like, oh, is this really worth it? And kind of maybe tell us, our audience or someone listening that's maybe in a project like this right now, maybe they're in the middle or maybe they're in the beginning stages, and maybe give them an idea of some of the things they can expect or some of the things you went through that really made it daunting.
Sure. I think, the first daunting piece came when we had to determine the financing package and exactly what it was going to cost. We had a certain amount of finances that were in reserve because the chamber originally had brought internet service to Shiawassee County. So that service was sold, and then that provided us with some coffers that we had that we were able to invest into this project.
Right.
So getting over that first financial hump and trying to figure out how to put those pieces together to come up with what we needed to was pretty daunting. And then as we were going through it, we pitched it to lending institutions to see if they would be interested in it. And we had one particular lending institution that was a credit union that was interested in starting a commercial loan program, which was not really done by credit unions very much at that time.
Right.
So they said that they were going to do the financing, and we had all of our partners in place. And then at the very last second, they pulled out of the deal for some internal reasons that they had. But we were crushed,
I imagine, yeah.
Because we had put about a year and a half into getting all this whole thing together, and it was very far down the road. And so at that point, we had to step back and say, we have to start this whole financing piece all over again, and see who we could find to do it. And fortunately, our friends at First National Bank of America stepped up and saw the vision of this project and were able to help us. But all along the way, there was stumbling blocks like that. And a lot of people, what you said is very true in that people expect instant gratification. Mm-hmm. And if something is not going on for a while or they don't see the progress, then you start to hear the things around town, oh, that's never going to happen.
Right.
And why would that happen for us? And, there all these little rumblings that go on.
Yeah, for sure.
And you have to be able to,
apathy plays a big part in that. Yeah, people.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think there's, I call them secret haters.
Yeah.
People who you think are on your side, but then around the other side, they're talking about
Doubters.
you or your project in a bad light.
That's very true.
I don't want to be negative because I'm a very positive person, but there are people like that out there, and that's unfortunate because I think it holds things up sometimes.
Yeah, and it holds a lot of people back. And, one of the things I've really tried to commit to do as I've been even on my journey with my business here is to silence the haters around you. And maybe silence them is not the right word because they're going to be there and they're going to say, but just to not listen to it. If you believe in something and you think you can do it, then you got to stay positive about it. And it does take time. You got to kind of put the work in, and you got to be committed to doing the difficult things and not really looking for the easy way out of every situation. And sometimes we can see in our mind an end result, and we want that right now. But anyone that has experienced any level of success has a journey and a story and setbacks and failures that went all into that got them to the point where they could finally enjoy the success. And then even when you get to that point, you feel like there's another level to attain. And so,
I mean, not to get too philosophical about the whole thing, but it seems to me like sometimes if you push too hard, then it's like you're pushing against your own success.
Right.
You have to find your rhythm where things will just they happen.
Yeah.
You do the right things, and then the right things just happen.
Right.
And just because you're on a certain timeline doesn't mean the the universe or whatever it is you choose to believe
Right.
doesn't mean you're on that same timeline.
Right.
And I think one of the things that I had to learn along the way is to let things happen in the time that they're supposed to happen,
Right.
rather than giving myself an ulcer trying to push up against something that wasn't ready to happen yet.
Yeah. Commit to the process. So in all of that time, that nearly 6 years, during all these setbacks, was there ever a time where you really seriously thought, I don't want to do this anymore? Like, that you really considered like handing it off to somebody else or just scrapping it altogether? Was there ever a time you really seriously had that thought?
I did think about things like that, you know. I think every person has those thoughts that come into their mind.
They
every once in a
absolutely
while.
do.
But I also, you know, fear is a big motivator for me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the one who failed. I didn't want to be the one who put this big project out there and got halfway through and walked away from it.
Right.
You know, I just didn't think that's not how I want to live my life.
Right.
And I frankly, how would I show my face around town
Right.
if something like that happened? So, I mean, once I was committed, I was committed to seeing it through.
Well, I think something we can pull from that even is, you know, you shared this vision with the community. So it wasn't just something you kept inside and you said, I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't work, I can back out. You committed it to a big audience.
Yeah.
So you really kind of gave yourself a built-in accountability that, like, it's not just letting me down now at this point, or me
Right.
quitting. This is quitting on something that's going to affect a lot of people. And so I think a good takeaway there for people is share that dream, that vision, that goal. Once you've kind of fleshed it out and realize its viability, share that with some people that can help keep you on track, and they can maybe encourage you along the way and help you
Right.
help you get there.
Because just like I mentioned, the folks who we call the secret haters, there's also so many encouraging,
Support,
loving people here.
for sure.
And we're fortunate to live in an area where we have so many people who care about us. And I know it's the case
Very
for
true.
you as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just like you with your podcast, you decided you weren't going to wait anymore. You put it out there and you took that step to make it happen. And once you voice what you're trying to do and you share it with people, it takes on a life of its own.
Absolutely. So, you know, in your wildest imagination, as you kind of pictured in your mind, as you saw the dust-covered building and the dilapidated walls and floors, and you saw the drop ceiling covering up the beautiful architecture, did you ever really imagine that it could be what it is today, that it could be this, or is it even more than you imagined?
I think it's even more than I imagined because it's taken on a life of its own now.
Right.
And just in the year we've been opened, we've had over 400 meetings in this space.
It's amazing.
And that to me says that it was a need.
Mm-hmm.
It was a need that we were able to fill. So I'm very excited about that. There was a lot of giving in this project. We called it value engineering,
Right.
where the initial vision of what would be here, we couldn't afford to do. So we had to back down and things like that. And we ran into some issues with the structure itself, which really set us back as well. So
I'm sure. Well, I just want to say congratulations on this. I'm sure there's a great sense of accomplishment that come along with seeing it open and seeing it really be of such great use to the community. It's getting utilized daily. You know, I know firsthand because we work right here on the first floor. We see all the different people coming in. Sometimes we feel like we're on the main street because there's so much traffic going past our window and past our suite there. And so we've got a lot of exposure just from it. And so I want to say from our company, thank you and congratulations on everything that you did here. It's awesome. And it's inspiring. It really is inspiring to see somebody have a good idea and then to kind of see it all the way through. So thank you for committing to do that.
yeah, well, and you are such a great partnership into what we have going here. You know, you bring a vibe and a way of doing business that has been beneficial for the whole space. So you're a vital part of the team of what we have going on here.
We appreciate that, and we really do love being a part of it, and we wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Jeff, what do you think is the most common reason that people, either give up on a dream or an idea or really don't even pursue it in the first place? What do you think is the most common reason for that?
I don't know. That's a tough question. I mean, for me personally, I probably have 15 ideas a day, that just come through my head.
For sure.
And to say that this is the one that you're going to pick, it can be a little daunting, especially if you're kind of, where your mind's all over the place.
Analytical.
Like,
yeah.
Well, I'm just like scattered.
Yeah.
And so I think the really good ones just keep kind of bubbling up, and that you're onto something because it just keeps bubbling up. And I think people are afraid of failing, and that's what holds them back from trying something. And they don't necessarily see the path from point A to point B. We get that all the time because we have the Small Business Development Center in our office, as well as the Economic Development Partnership and the CVB. So we have this whole kind of business center, and people come in and they may be really good at one particular point of their business or what they do, but they don't have any idea of how to structure and run a business.
Right.
And so I think fear and lack of knowledge of how to do it are two big factors in that.
Do you think it's more of a fear of failure or criticism? I know both come in play, but do you think people generally fear the idea that they would fail or the idea that people would criticize their failure?
So I almost think that changes with your age. Like when you're young and you're thinking about starting a business, the fear is criticism.
Right.
As you get older, you kind of are able to brush aside the criticism a little bit better, and it's more fear of failing, because as you get older, your time is more limited on what you can start. So you want to be more, you have to be very on task. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I think that's great. I think it's very accurate that it is sometimes an age thing because, I remember that time in my life where really worrying about how people would perceive what I'm doing and if it's successful, and even desiring to accomplish success for the benefit of proving somebody else wrong or gaining that affirmation from people. And I do think as you get older, you realize that comes and goes. There's always going to be haters. There's always going to be supporters. There's always going to be that. But that idea that once you've gotten to a point in your life, an age where you're like, man, if I fail now, am I too old to start over? Am I at a point? So I think I can agree with that wholeheartedly. So in relation to this building, in relation to the Armory itself, what is your proudest achievement? I know you probably have a lot of things in your life that you're proud of, but in relation to this, what are you most proud of?
I think for me, I'm most proud of when I get here every morning, seeing all the people coming and going out of the building and seeing it actually come to life. That's really a proud moment for me.
I'm sure. And that is neat to kind of see that people are utilizing it. It's not just a done, finished building. Right. It's being utilized heavily.
And creatively, if I may say, there's a lot of creative energy in this building and things that are being made here, not necessarily, machine made, but made with people's talents.
For sure. So Jeff, to our audience out there, to someone that's listening that has an idea, that has a vision for something, that has really been thinking about something, what would you say is a good first step? Well, what first step would you encourage someone to take in that process?
I think a good first step is to actually write down your idea, put it into some sort of thing that you can look at and that you can take to somebody else and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And once you kind of put that out there, verbalize it or write it down or, create a little template, then start by getting answers to questions and chip away at it. Mm-hmm. Don't think that you're going to form a multinational corporation overnight.
Right.
It takes time, and there are steps to go. And if you get stuck, there are people to help you,
Right.
and people who want to help you. I mean, we offer free services to organize your business here.
Yeah.
And if you're in a development project and things are not going your way, I would just encourage you to be patient. And when a front door is closed, go through the side door. When the side door is closed, go through the back door. There's always a way
Right.
to do something.
So the name of our podcast is No Easy Way Out. And so in this particular scenario, the easy way out when you're faced with adversity, when you're faced with setbacks, the easy way out is to quit, to not look for an alternate route. You mentioned going through a different door. There are multiple entrances to get somewhere. And so I think that's great advice. If you're listening today, I mean, here's a man who has done it. He's been through the fire. He had an idea that in his mind probably would be a couple-year project that took nearly 6 years and saw it all the way through. And so I think that's advice worth listening to. So then it's a good first step, but what would you tell somebody not to do at the beginning, or something to avoid at the beginning that maybe would be a big mistake?
I think you should avoid trying to do everything yourself. You cannot be an expert in every area, and you need to rely on those people who know different things. I've met a lot of business people who think that it's all in their head, and sometimes you're pushing up against things that you because you don't really have expertise in it, you can really hurt yourself. You can hurt relationships, and you can hurt the legality of what you're trying to do. So having expert assistance when you need it, I think is key.
I had a mentor of mine, a friend of mine, early on when I was starting, said, surround yourself with experts, real experts. Meaning, and what he was telling me is, number one, don't try to be the expert of everything. Be an expert at what you're an expert at, or what you can be an expert at. But then surround yourself with people that know what they're doing and rely on their expertise. Don't feel like you have to be the jack of all trades.
Right.
Focus on your strengths. And of course, I think you read any leadership book, they're going to tell you the same thing.
Sure.
And so,
but it's a trust thing as well.
It sure is, absolutely. And it can be a pride thing too,
Sure.
where you don't want to admit that you don't know how to do something, or that you don't know how to do something as well as somebody else. And
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point in my life where if someone can do it better than me and faster than me and more efficiently and make more money, then hey, I'm going to learn from that person, and I'm going to rely on that person. So
You also have to think about what the value of your time is.
exactly.
Right? Like, if you don't hire an expert and all the time that you take in doing that, and then you compare it to how quickly somebody who has expertise in it could do it, your time is valuable and worth working on something else in your business that you're really good at.
Right. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. Okay, Jeff, so here we are now a year in. It's really now been almost 7 years since the inception of the idea. So knowing what you know now, if you had to do it all over again, first of all, would you? And then what would you do differently?
Yeah. I would definitely do it again. And I think there are some things that perhaps we could be a little quicker at now, just because we've been through the process once before. I think I could probably keep it a little more organized and happen quicker.
Sure.
But some of it was out of our control.
Right.
I think anytime you can do something that puts a mark on your community that's like a lasting thing, I would encourage you to do it.
Rewarding.
Yeah. I mean, I had this opportunity.
Yeah.
This was an opportunity for me.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that the board of the chamber decided to give me the opportunity and they gave me the rope, that I needed to make sure that I could have a save, but also had freedom to make decisions that needed to be made.
Right. And I think it's important to acknowledge that very few people that have success got there on their own. There was always someone or some people behind them that helped make it real and helped make it a possibility and gave them the rope, as you described. Well, the last question I have for you then, Jeff, and again, thank you for being here today, is what is the best advice that you could give someone out there who's has that idea, who has that that vision, but they're just afraid? Maybe it's afraid of failure, maybe it's afraid of criticism, but what's the best advice you could give them if they're holding back?
I think the best advice I could give is just comes from my own failings in life, and no particular single failure has ever killed me,
Right.
or has ever been as bad as what I thought it was going to be
Right.
before it happened.
You're still standing.
I'm still standing. No easy way out, as
Right.
you say.
Right.
And so I just that fear of failing is often way worse than actual failure.
Actual failure, yeah.
And when you get on in life and you're older and you look back, you're gonna question the things you didn't try.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no, you don't get the time back, so you might as well give it a go. What's
Right.
the worst that can happen?
Exactly. That's a great way to look at it. And, time is one of those resources that you never can get back. Well, thank you, Jeff, for being our guest today. It's been very inspirational. I learned a lot from you, and I hope that this was beneficial to our audience. I'm certain that there's someone out there that's going to hear that today that's going to benefit from this. So thank you for sharing your heart and sharing your journey. If you want to learn more about the Chamber of Commerce, you can visit shiawasichamber.org, or if you want to learn more about the building we described today, the Armory, you can visit their website, thearmoryproject.com.
Yeah.
And so lots of information there and lots of things to learn. So, Jeff, thank you again for being on our show.
Appreciate you having me. I always enjoy talking teamwork and strategy with you.
We appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you. If you're listening today, number one, heed this advice. This is some great advice, great truth, great words today, Jeff. We appreciate it. Don't get to the end of your life and regret that, I should have done that, I could have done that, I would have done that. But take a risk today. Maybe you're listening today and you have a dream, you have a vision, you have an idea, a startup, something that you've been wanting to do or that you maybe just thought of. I really hope that today's episode has inspired you to take that first step. Write it down. Start there. Check its viability. Get online, do some research, see if anyone else has done something like it. Maybe you can learn something. Listen to a gentleman like Jeff Deason today who described the process and the things that he went to. But avoid taking the easy way out. When I was a young boy, my mother always used to say to me this phrase, "You can't and never could until you tried." So whether I was learning to ride my bike or trying to figure out how to dribble the basketball with my left hand and getting frustrated because it was hard, or even I remember the first time I wanted to ask a girl out and I was afraid of it, my mom would throw out that phrase, "You can't and never could until you tried." My mom never let me use the phrase, "I can't." Never let either of us do that, me or my sister. And I think that helps a young person as they're growing up to have that kind of reaffirmation, or I don't know if that's the right word I'm looking for, but that kind of affirmation in your ear that don't say you can't. You can if you want to. And I really try to live by that today. I don't think, I don't allow myself to say I can't. And so maybe that's what's holding you back. Maybe you just think, "Oh, I can't do that." And maybe the reality is you can't by yourself, but who else out there in your corner could help you? Who else is out there that could give you that next step? And who else is out there that could help give you the rope that Jeff described to help make it a possibility? And so you have a dream, try. Just get out there and try. You have an idea, try. You have a vision, try. Take that first step. So I want to encourage you today, listening, get out there, dig in, put your hands to the plow, and get something done. Thank you for joining us today. As I always say, as the great Deborah Nash, my mother, said, "You can't and never could until you tried." So don't take the easy way out, my friends. We'll see you next time. Hey guys, if you like that video, be sure and give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel by clicking the link below. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram.